So it's nothing new that Google image search is a huge source of traffic of customers who might be interested in your products or services. In fact, over 1/3 of site visitors use Google image search. Now, if you do it wrong and simply upload an image onto your website, hoping to get it ranked high on Google image search, then think again. And if you do that, you won't be as effective. You see, the problem is that ranking on image search isn't as easy as it was back in 2005 or even 2010. Plus, on top of that, there are tons and tons of different marketing strategies out there that you can get lost in. Now, many of these work and many of these have faded away. So what works and what doesn't? What is a long-term strategy that will work for years to come? Now, it's simple. You see, understanding what keywords are in demand and how to properly optimize your image before you make it live is what will help Google know where to categorize your image. So methods have changed and so has the algorithm. And if you're interested, you will learn the most updated SEO strategies that you must do before you make your images live. So I want to welcome you to a 9-part step-by-step video course that shows you how to rank on image search and get targeted visitors back to your site. So in this specific video training course, you're going to get a step-by-step, click-by-click, watch over my shoulder, basically learn what you need to do to rank higher on the Google image search. Now, here's a quick overview of what's inside this video course. Video number 1 is the introduction. We're going to kind of give you a brief overview of the course itself, what you need before you get started. Video number 2, we're going to talk about a specific checklist and give you a general overview of what you really need to focus on and optimize in terms of images so that you get your image ranked high. And then of course videos 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is the checklist but on a more detailed level. So for example, video number 3, we're going to talk about the content that is surrounding the image, why it's important, and what needs to be around the image. Video number 4, we're going to talk about the file format. The reality is that different file formats will appeal to Google and will run faster on your website. And if you choose the wrong file format, that might actually hurt you in the long run. Video number 5, we're going to talk about image size and why that is important. Video number 6, we're going to talk about compression, essentially the idea of trying to make your images smaller. How do you do that? How do you go about doing that? If you have thousands of images on your WordPress site already, how do you go about doing that without having to compress them one by one? And video number 7, we'll talk about file names, why that is important. And a lot of these elements are actually very common overlooked elements. Video number 8, we're going to talk about alt tags. And this is the one that most people focus on. Video number 9, after you've learned how to really optimize your images, I'm going to show you how to automate the process in video number 9. Now, we don't want to do that first because you need to understand how the process works. So with that said, go ahead and grab this video course today and begin optimizing your images the right way. Hello and welcome back. This is video number 7, and in this specific video, we're going to talk about file names, why it's important, and we'll talk about page URL as well. Now, the best way to show this is to again reverse engineer what Google ranks as popular for specific keyword terms, and then taking a look at them and getting an idea of what you need to do in your own website. So here I'm at google.com, and I went ahead and typed in 30-minute chicken soup recipe, just because I'm hungry for some chicken soup. So as someone who is interested in this particular area, I've typed it in, I've clicked on the images, and I'm looking for something that really appeals to my eye. So image search is not just about trying to game the system, but really trying to appeal to that specific person who is typing in that keyword. So it needs to be presentable. It can't be something that is trash, essentially. So as I'm going through here, I clicked on this one because this one actually caught my eye. And it's a big bowl of soup, chicken soup. It's got a ton of vegetables in it. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. Now, I want you to specifically watch carefully as I'm doing this. So, for example, I'm looking at the image here, and the next step is to click Visit. So we're going to visit this person's website, and we're going to look for that specific image. So obviously there's going to be many images. We don't know if it's going to be the first one, the second one, or what. So let's just go ahead and scroll down. Click X there. So we got that there. Let me minimize this to about 100. So we see right away that this is definitely the first page. Now that's interesting. Now, what I like it to do is, regardless of what browser you're using, whether it's Google Chrome, Safari, or Internet Explorer, what you want to do is you want to right click on that image. And then you want to click on Open Image in a new tab. And the reason why we want to do this is this. So we can see here that this is the file name. It says chicken noodle soup -5.jpg. So Google's going to read the file name. So they can see that it is chicken soup, noodle soup. And if you think about it, that's what I typed in, chicken soup. So that's relevant, right? And it's going to look at the URL as well. So it's not just going to look at the file name, but it's going to look at the category name and all of that. It's also going to take a look at the page it's on and the, of course, like we talked about earlier, the words that surround it. Now, speaking of file names, if your file name, let's say, for example, in this case, chicken noodle soup, your main keyword is chicken noodle soup, but you have a file name that says something like 12345-!.jpg. If that's the case, then that's a big mistake there. And all you have to do is simply change the file name, link it, and that's it. So in terms of file names or page URLs, that's all you have to do. So we can obviously see that this is the third highest ranking image for that keyword term, and Google sees this as relevant. Now, if we go back to the search that we did earlier, and let's just scroll all the way down to the bottom somewhere, and just see kind of an idea as to why maybe they're all the way at the bottom. Now, another reason why a lot of these are at the top is because people are clicking on them, and that tells Google that they're relevant. So a lot of these may not, as we can see, we scroll down further down, they don't look like the normal chicken noodle soup. And that's because people are interacting with it. So that's why I said you can't really game the system, because this is all about human engagement and interaction. Now this one here says 30-minute chicken soup. Now that's a YouTube video, so that we're going to keep going down. Tomato chicken soup. This one here. So let's just click this. Now you can see the images are really big, right? Remember, Google likes a certain type of image. So if we click this, we click visit, and we find the image, let's just see what happens here. So we can see Sandra's Alaska recipes. We scroll down. The image is a little big. The text that's wrapping it may not really relate. So see that? So the file name is way too long. The page URL is way too long. And that's another thing. When I talk about page URL and file name, they're all together, clumped together, but your page URL, you want to make sure that it's short. You don't want to have it too long. So we can see that the file name here is chicken%2b noodle soup cheddar cornbread.jpg. So the problem with this is that there's all these %2 signs and all that. What you need to do is, if you have spaces, use hyphens. So it should look like this, like a hyphen. Don't use underscores, just use hyphens to kind of signify spaces. So it should be as simple as chicken-noodle-soup.jpg. So as you can see here, and this is reverse engineering this, that this is all the way at the bottom. This is probably number 100 or more. And it's all the way at the bottom, and it's got a long page URL and very long, very confusing file name. So you can get an idea now as to what you need to do. All right, so let's just scroll back up here. Now, in terms of how to change the file name, if let's say you already uploaded it and the file name is already there, how do you go about changing it? So to do that, there's several ways. It really depends on what website you're using. If you're using like HTML that's not WordPress, then you will need to change that file name on your computer, whether it's a Mac or a Windows computer. You simply right-click that, click rename, and rename it as such. Now, if you're using something like WordPress, you can simply usually you can go into the image editor and you can change the name there. Or sometimes, a lot of times, what I recommend is installing a WordPress plugin such as Yoast. Yoast SEO, that's yoast.com/WordPress. And if you just go here and you click on Yoast SEO, install that, you'll be good to go. And it'll allow you to essentially put alt tags for the images, and you can also, within WordPress, edit your file names. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of why it's very, very important to essentially change your file names to make sure that they are the keywords that you're trying to rank on. Plus all the other variables that we talked about, like the text that wraps around it should relate to that keyword. Hello and welcome to video number 4. And in this video, we're going to talk about image conversion. So why would you want to convert your images from one type to another? Well, as far as what we've been talking about, how to make the images faster, load quicker, so that the experience for your visitors are going to be a lot better. So there are different types of images out there. We've got PNGs, we've got JPEGs, we've got GIF files, and we have all sorts of other files as well. JPEGs are a lot of times very compressed. They kind of lose their quality, but at the same time, they're compressed, they load quicker. So it really comes down to how much of the image are you willing to lose? Are you willing to make it just a little bit fuzzy, but not too fuzzy, so that you will be able to make the image load faster? There are several different options that you can take. You can either, if in this case you are using a WordPress site, you can convert your PNG files to JPEGs. So there are different plugins out there that you can use, one of them which is PNG to JPEG. And another one that we've tested and that we really like is called Kraken.io. Kraken.io is very efficient, but yet it does cost a little bit of money to use, but it takes your images and you can tell it, convert it to JPEG. And what it'll do is it'll try to take, let's say, for example, a 1 megabyte file and then decrease as much as possible down to maybe 50%. And that's a huge amount of speed. If you think about it, if you have 1,000 images and multiply that by 500 kilobytes, that's amount of files that you could potentially save and speed things up for your viewers. So as you can see here, it supports JPEG, PNG, and GIF, including animated GIFs, but sometimes converting the images from one to another will actually speed things up. To give you a better view of this, I want to head on over to Photoshop, and we discussed and used this example in the previous video, but I want to use it again. But let's say, for example, I wanted to convert this image from one file type to another image file type. So if I go to the top and click on File, and then we do Export as and Save as for Web, and we click on that, this is a really good example of the type of files we're dealing with, but also the amount and the size. So we can see by default this image here that we resized earlier is about 488 kilobytes. Now, how can we get that down? So what Photoshop will do is it'll give you 4 different examples. So we can see kind of how it loses the quality here. So we can see this one has lost a good amount of quality, but it's 12 kilobytes. So this would not be an issue if we have tons and tons of images. Now you really have to think about it. If you are in the photography business and your images are very, very important, then you may want to think about not using these images and maybe something like this. But if you're not in the photography business and your images are important, but they're not as important, to your visitors, then you might want to use these. So this is PNG right here. Now, let's say, for example, we want to change them to JPEG. So these are JPEGs here. Let's say that I'm going to change this one from PNG to a JPEG. So we'll do JPEG. Now, with a JPEG, there is a range. You can either tell it to convert to a lower quality, medium quality, high, very high to maximum. So if we do low, you can see it's gone here. If we do medium, it's gotten a little better. And if we do high, the quality looks about the same compared to this one. But the difference is this is 400 kilobytes versus this one is about 20 kilobytes. So that's a huge, huge reduction if you think about it. Now, you could change from PNG to GIF file, but I personally would not recommend that unless you're dealing with some sort of animation. But as you can see, it's bumped up from 20 to 72 kilobytes. So I just wanted to show you this as an example of what happens when you change the file type. Now, JPEGs are usually very friendly in terms of websites, so that's just something to bear in mind. So if we click on save, we export it and we upload it, we'll save a good amount of space just by changing the file type and thereby getting it load quicker and faster, giving our viewers a better experience.